Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pause Reviews podcast, where Tim and I watch everything we physically and emotionally can in the very short amount of time to try to help find something awesome for you to watch tonight. I'm your host, Frank, joined as always by the trusty co-host I just mentioned, Tim. Welcome, Timothy.
Oof.
Oof.
Boy.
Oof. Oof. This is one of those weeks. That's not true. That's actually not true. This is we pulled an audible.
Yep.
This week has been difficult for many reasons, personally for both of us, and just, with work, day jobs, all this other kind of stuff. This was a tough week, and we had a loose plan going into the week, and then discovered that a movie we'd both been really interested in seeing, but you maybe more so than I, became available. So I am not for this whole $20 to rent stuff. If it was $20 or even $30 to buy the movie outright, I would do it maybe a little more often.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to drop $20 to rent it and then like it and then drop another $20 to own it. So we've been waiting on Nobody for a while.
Yep.
And it was finally available, so we pulled an audible. We were going to initially do Army of the Dead, Lupin Season 2, and a listener request, Clifford, from Peter. And then we replaced Lupin with Nobody.
Yep.
But in watching watching Army of the Dead and Nobody, we realized that we actually have quite a bit we want to say.
Yeah, it's true.
So we also had to Peter, I'm sorry. We're going to talk about your movie in the next episode. I guarantee it. But Clifford is being bumped in favor of what I'm hoping is going to be some interesting conversation about these other two movies.
Yeah, maybe we did ourselves no favors. We'll find out. If we absolutely love Clifford, then maybe we'll regret this decision a little bit. Not on a whole.
No regrets, Tim.
Yeah, definitely.
No regrets.
It's been a little bit of a struggle. Like you said, not just personally. I found one of these movies a little tough to chew on. And the other one, I just couldn't swallow. So
interesting. And I think we're going to differ a little bit on Nobody. Yeah, so that should make for a good conversation.
Yep.
Which is what I'm anticipating. And that could backfire. And we could end up doing this whole episode in 25 minutes and having plenty of room for these other movies that we didn't prep. But I don't think that's going to be the case. So yeah. So this week, as I said, we're going to talk about the Netflix original film Army of the Dead, written and directed by Zack Snyder, who, Zack Snyder is a guy who giveth and then taketh away. And I feel like he really goes through some real taketh away moments, like some real long spells of taketh away. And this one for me certainly falls in that, right? Like, he gives you 300. People love or hate it. He gives you 300, and then he gives you Sucker Punch, and then maybe Watchmen is a little bit decent, and then he gives you whatever. It's just it's
let's
too
let's
back
just
and
put
forth.
It this way. I feel like if anybody that was clamoring for the Snyder cut of Justice League had been served this first, I think you might have been.
It would have definitely died down.
Let's not do that.
Yeah,
because it's bad.
Which on the heels of that is, oh man, I mean, Snyder Cut was actually solid, but that's maybe that's the genius of it, right?
Maybe.
Like it was like Justice. I mean, we're not here to talk about Justice League, at least not yet. We haven't forgotten. We do still owe that episode, but Justice League was such a turd. It was hard to imagine it getting any worse than that. I didn't think it was going to get drastically better. I was actually surprised with the ceiling, that the Snyder Cut provided. But this just brings it like there's been a huge uproar, right? To now that Discovery's kind of behind the wheel and all this other kind of stuff that, you know, to rejuvenate the Snyderverse, right?
Yeah.
Let him do the other two movies and et cetera. But I don't know if this is any indication of the direction he's heading in. I'm not interested, right? Like, you know, directors, this happens sometimes. Kevin Smith is one of my favorite directors and one of my favorite writers. I was always in awe of the way he could write people, characters, right? And like in a genuine voice that resonated and felt realistic and believable, at least in the time, right? You know, maybe people don't necessarily talk that way now, but it certainly felt real. And then, you know, sometimes, you know, like any of us, they change. People go through different things. Their artistic vision, you know, painters, artists throughout history have had various periods in their careers defined by drastic stylistic changes. Directors are no different. And Kevin Smith, for example, he went down a path where he was, you know, his artistic vision changed and it drastically diverted from my interests, and we had to part ways, he and I. And I know he was devastated by that. I know
you weren't interested in walrus people?
Tusk? No. Tusk was the beginning of the end, right? Clerks 2 was his last good movie that I enjoyed. So then you got Tusk. Yoga Hosers was, dear God, that was abysmal. And even Jay and Silent Bob reboot, like it just... Look, it happens. That's fine.
Yeah.
If this is where Zack Snyder's going, I'm not interested. And I would have gone to bat for this guy on a lot of things that people hated. I can't get behind this one.
Well, and I think you pointed out a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning. That's not his only credit in this movie.
No.
And I think that is very, very telling of where this movie ends up. I mean, this movie was terribly cast. Let's give
it the official stamp of boom, we're talking about Army of the Dead now.
Yeah. So before we get into it, go give us a little insight on what I'm saying here. That, you know, he's got some different credits here.
Gotcha. Yeah. So great prompting, Tim. You should be a late night host. I feel like I went through the pre-interview and you know just how to set me up. So Army of the Dead released this year, and Zack Snyder not only carries writer credit and director credit, which is something that he has done, I would say, I think probably like 90% of the time. He's usually heavily involved in the writing process and is equal parts writer and director. But what I noticed when I was watching it is he's also credited as the director of photography, right? And I wasn't sure, like, it didn't stand out to me that was something that had happened in any of his previous movies. So I looked it up, and it seems like he was the cinematographer on a short back in 2017. But this is the first feature film that he's credited as the DP or the cinematographer. Their terms are somewhat interchangeable, but not really.
Okay.
Anyway, so for those who don't know, who's the DP, right? So you have your director. The director runs the show. He's the boss, or she is the boss. They are the boss, and they're in charge of casting, editing, the direction of the film, and the actors, obviously, coming up with the overarching visual, the tone, the feel. It is their vision that we see on screen, right?
Yeah.
A vision only gets you so far. The director of photography takes that vision and actually brings it to life. They are second only to the director on set, right? And they are charged with executing the director's vision. They are the technical experts on how to make the shot work, how to light the shot, how to use the right equipment, the right cameras, all these kinds of things to get what the director is looking for, right? To frame it out and et cetera. So for a director to also be the director of photography is not as short a jump or a leap as you might think. These are actually drastically different technical skills on a movie set. And for it to be the same person and to successfully be the same person would require someone with really great skill. Yeah. And I'm not sure Zack Snyder's that guy, right?
Yeah, I think the reason that we sort of started questioning this, and I had heard rumor and seen mention that this was a tough movie to visually watch. Usually when somebody says, "Oh, this was a tough watch," that you're talking about the content of the movie. But this was
right.
physically tough to watch at parts. There was a filter, I think, is what you were leaning towards, but at points the background was just blurry, not out of focus, but like the best way I can describe it is the feature on Zoom. If anybody has been using the blur out your background feature, where it's not just out of focus, it's just blurred and it looks weird, and it was really, really messing with my head and gave me a headache at certain parts. To the point I was like, I don't really want to watch this.
It's like Zack Snyder showed up on set and was like, guys, we're gonna revolutionize the game. And I'm going to shoot this entire movie on my iPhone in portrait mode. I'm not an iPhone user, but I think that's the thing, right? Like you can set it and it blurs your background. So rather than technically achieving depth of field in the shot using actual cameras, using awesome lenses, things like that, it was just a filter added on, and everything's blurred out around it, but it looks and feels unnatural. Because the image itself is still flat, which is what I think was kind of playing with your eyes and playing with your head, because it wasn't successfully saying this stuff is far in the background. It still felt very much in the foreground, but blurry. Yeah. Which doesn't look or feel right. Our brains, our eyes don't process that correctly because it's artificial. It's not correct. Yes. On top of that, too, there was just some really weird editing choices in terms of just sporadic and crazy little camera flares and like little neon artifacts and things that would sort of glitter and flash on screen, and it was so distracting. It felt complex or complicated for the sake of being so, but not necessarily with any sort of purpose or thought given to why. It felt like a cheap Suicide Squad. It felt like,
and it even looks like it just by looking at the cover art.
Yes,
right?
yes. It's just I don't know, man. It's like Mardi Gras for the sake of Mardi Gras. It's I don't know, man. It's really hard to describe it and define it, but it looked awful.
Yeah, I mean, and then just add on top of that, I'm looking at the cover art now, and it's very Vegas-y, right? Neon, bright colors, but it was all desert tone and brown and burned, and again, just tough to look at. So,
but not in a good way. Not in like, this is a zombie movie. Yeah, I could understand the argument or the case for like I wanted the viewer to feel uncomfortable. Yeah. So that they could get the sense and the tone of what the movie is. And we've seen that play out successfully. Sure. That was not the case here. This all felt like a mistake. It didn't feel intentional, and it didn't feel well done. So therefore, it was almost like everything was a bad shot. So he was just throwing up. I'm going to throw someone under the bus. But back in the day, I used to do wedding videos. Right.
Nice.
And before my buddy and I, we kind of started this little company doing wedding videos. And before, we actually got decent tech and good cameras and were able to actually shoot high quality HD footage. We were shooting on little mini DV tapes and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, the footage was not good. It was grainy. It was muddy. It was whatever. And our skills weren't super up to par either. My buddy Brian was by far the better editor, and so a lot of times we relied on a lot of masks and filters, right? That would seem, when someone would watch it, he did our wedding video, and and it was grainy and it was whatever, and that was just a limitation of the equipment, not of the man.
Sure.
But we would put these these textures and these overlays and make it look like an old timey film or like this. You know what I'm saying? And it's an effort to try to hide our inexperience, to hide our failings, and try to mask it as intent. And that's what this felt like. It felt like Zack Snyder had no freaking clue what he was doing as a director of photography. And instead of just staying in his lane and bringing on someone to enact his vision correctly, he took on more than he could chew. And in the end, and in post, he just had to try to mask it all as intentional. And maybe it was, but honestly, either way, it sucked.
Yeah, and we haven't even gotten to the movie itself, and I will tell you, it doesn't get better.
Take us there, Tim. Take us to Flavor Town.
Oh God, I was in it to the point of, I've seen a lot of zombie movies. There's not much unique to a zombie movie, right?
Sure.
Anymore. The setup was kind of okay.
Yep, agreed.
Vegas is lost, to this military experience.
The setup was okay, but also really vague.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you ever saw sort of like Dracula 2000 or something like this idea of there's this alpha spreader, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And but how did he come to be? Was he a genetic thing? Was it a military thing? Was it a weaponized thing? None of that is really made clear. We just open up to the military transporting. Oh my God. Yeah, I take it back. I disagree wholeheartedly with you, Tim. The military is transporting this mystery box that's, we come to find out is filled with this crazy zombie Dracula. Yep. And they're driving down the road having a benign, boring conversation. This other clown shoe gets married, is getting a road blowy while he drives his car, which, look.
Let's be clear. I wasn't talking about this setup. This setup is garbage.
The whole thing is garbage. So, so this dude is driving down and apparently is just like so enraptured in the throes of passion that he can't keep his eyes open, swerves to the side. He doesn't swerve totally off the road, right? Like if someone is totally out of control, they're just going to keep drifting and eventually he'd end up in the sand.
Yep.
But he swerves just enough to stay perfectly straight, dead on, and crash into this military bus that,
both of them are not paying attention because they're too busy talking about,
when we
say aliens?
When we see the headlights shining straight in their faces and they, undeterred, continue their conversation, staring deeply and lovingly into one another's eyes, right? Like, It is enraging. And I'm just, like, at what point? Like, if I'm sitting there having a little conversation, looking to the side, and all of a sudden there's lights right in my face, I'm looking forward, right? And if someone's blowing me while I'm driving, I'm not going to have my eyes closed, right? If it gets to that point, if she's that good, pull over. Right? Anyways, so that's how the movie starts. I like that this is just devolved into. But the movie starts, and then this zombie vampire is set loose on Vegas, and then we see apparently this is the setup you're talking about.
Well, so just the idea in terms of a zombie movie, I was like, it's going to be a heist movie set in like this zombie apocalypse.
Yes, and I was for that.
I'm like, okay, all right, a little very Oceans, esque in terms of like we're gonna put a team together and we're gonna do this heist, but there's this added element of zombies, and that was it. That after that, there's nothing delivered on this promise.
Right. It's so muddied by. You're spot on. Yes, by everything.
Because what I was thinking was this is the classic example that we have talked about before of there's not enough going on with this story, so we add too much to it, too much conflict. Right? Like, it's not enough that this is a heist movie going into this locked down Vegas that is now zombie territory. We have to add a father-daughter fractured relationship dynamic.
Right.
Oh, but that's not enough. We need to add my friend risked their lives to, steal some money from a broke down casino, and she's a mother of two and she's stuck in there. I got to go rescue her. All right, we got to add that. Oh, then okay, still not enough going on. So eventually we're going to add a love dynamic between two of the lead and one of the other mercenaries. Oh, that's still not enough.
Oh, so, and that happens at like minute 199 of 200.
Right.
And is at no point set up or alluded to prior to that. So literally, you've watched these two characters. By the way, this movie's 2.5 freaking hours long.
Yeah.
Right? So you are watching. Are you kidding me? Zack Snyder, like, not everything is the freaking Snyder cut. We don't need a 3-hour zombie movie.
But you do in this case, because you had to add this love story. You had to add this sentient zombie kingdom with
a zombie baby.
And a zombie king and a zombie queen. And then you got to add on the fact that the nuclear bomb that we were going to throw on Vegas, we're just going to bump that up by 24 hours to add a little bit more fake tension to this.
And why? And they even tell you, it's like, which I thought was so cheesy and campy. Early in the beginning, they're like, everything's great. We're moving forward. We're going to nuke Vegas, and it's going to all happen and coincide with sunset on July 4th. Independence Day. This is going to be the greatest firework anyone's ever seen. We're going to nuke Vegas. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, what a stupid premise. But at least it's a premise. So you established that, right? Independence Day, freedom from this, thing. These refugees are in the camps and whatever else. And so, you set all this up, and then randomly, like 2 hours in, it's like, all right, guys, we're going to kick it up 24 hours. But why? No reason as to why. You watched these two characters for 2 hours just interact as friends, and then all of a sudden, how could you not have known I loved you forever? I didn't know that, baby. Let's make sandwiches together. What are you talking about, sandwiches? It can be tofu, and we're going to have conversations about sandwiches. Guys, I know this sounds nuts. This is what happens. This is what happens in the movie. Zack Snyder was out of his mind. And you know what? This movie got a surprising amount of good press. And I don't get it. There's already a prequel coming out. There's already a spin-off TV series coming off of this.
Yep.
And this movie was a total piece of shit.
And add on the top of that it was horribly cast. Dave Bautista has no business as a leading man. He cannot carry a film. The only character who I think can act in this is Dieter, the German safecracker. He was hilarious.
Yes.
And he was the only person that I wanted to see more of. And he somewhat unceremoniously gets it, like, sort of that story between him and the friend that he makes. Like, it's sort of endearing. Like, it's kind of nice. But it
Yeah, no, I agree. The safecracker, Dieter. So the actor's name is Matthias. How do you say his last? He's German. Matthias, like Schweighofer or something like that.
Yeah.
Matthias Schweighofer.
Yeah, Schweighofer.
Yeah, but it's like an umlaut, isn't it? Don't you say
Schweighofer?
Schweighofer.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I dug him a lot. Whenever he was on camera, he was charismatic. He was fun to watch. He was funny and entertaining. The prequel centers around him. So the prequel movie coming out is called Army of Thieves, and it focuses on him and his little band of thieves working right at the start of this whole zombie thing.
Yeah.
but I believe and he's directing it too. Matthias. He's set to direct. It's still written, I think, by Zack Snyder, so that's going to be unfortunate. Yeah. But anyway, so he's the most lovable character. I would agree with you there. Everyone else feels like absolute B or C squad. Dave Bautista has no business carrying a movie, right? Stuber was awful. My Spy or whatever, the Amazon thing, awful. He can't do it. He's a great character, a surprisingly good character actor.
Yeah.
Love him as Drax.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what's funny is he hates that character. And I agree with the argument, right? If you're a Guardians of the Galaxy fan, Drax the Destroyer is suddenly like much more of an idiot than he is a destroyer. Look, I'm not an actor. That's not my jam. But I also don't bill myself as one. So so if you're going to put yourself out there and say you're an A-list star and a leading man, I'm sorry to tell you, buddy, you're not. And I love you, DC boy, representing our town. Yeah. But just stay in your lane. And he can't carry this movie. And part of it is his fault, yes, but a big part of it is the writing, man.
Yeah.
The dialogue, everything about this movie is it's unwatchable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even it's groan worthy, the decisions that are made. I make light of the pile, let's add another thing to it. But it was truly groan inducing every time another ridiculous element was added to it. And one of the things that irked me the most was at the beginning of the movie, they have what I felt was completely patronizing, this little like montage of like, this is the plan and we're gonna go in, and it's like all of them guns blazing, we're gonna handle it, we're gonna get in there, we're gonna get the millions of dollars, and we're gonna get out, easy peasy lemon squeezy, we're done, we did it, awesome. And like, that's not how it's gonna go down. No movie, a zombie movie or heist movie has ever gone down like that. And what was the point in that? It wasn't funny. And like I said, to me, it just felt patronizing, because I was like, no, I know right now that every single one of these people is going to die. That's just a given. Why waste 10 minutes of screen time on this like glorified, how the plan is perfectly going to go? It was just dumb. It was so dumb.
No, if you look to bring it all kind of home.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a movie of ragtag like baddies that you want to root for and whatever, watch Deadpool. Watch Deadpool 2, right? Yeah. You've got Deadpool and Cable and Domino and this sort of team of misfits who are not the best people coming together to do this, and it's funny, right? This movie was trying to be a little bit funny here and there, and it fails at that. Even watch Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad's a not good movie, but it's far better than this, and far more successful too at the artistic license that it takes with how it's shot and portrayed on screen, right? Yeah. That is this movie done right. You want to watch a unique movie about zombies or some kind of a creature who sort of becomes a lot more sentient and organized or whatever, watch I Am Legend, right? Yeah. As these creatures that people think are just stupid, zombie type creatures suddenly start to think more for themselves and become more aware and that kind of a thing. Because, that could have been a really cool element, right? You touched on two things that really failed that could have been awesome. One, it's a heist movie wrapped up in a zombie movie. Mm-hmm. And we have shed and gushed so much love on movies that we've seen that wolves in sheep's clothing that lie and say, hey, I'm this thing, but really at its core, it's something totally different.
And we just did it last week with Arrival.
Yeah. It's a family drama masked as an alien movie. It's, whatever. We've done it a bunch. And that has the potential to be really, really cool, really awesome, and totally unique. And this movie fails at that. It fails as a zombie movie, and it gets lost in its own complexity, right? In trying to hide its shortcomings of really bad screenwriting, it tries to hide in a forest of look over here, look over here, look over here, and distraction and bells and whistles, and it's not fooling anybody, right? This whole narrative of zombies can now procreate, it goes nowhere, right? The zombies barely are a factor. All they do is kind of shimmy on camera, like a bunch of dancers on camera, and there's, chanting and chirping and listening to each other's bellies and whatever. But none of that is explored. None of that pays off. None of it comes to fruition. And it's awful.
Tiger.
The zombie tiger. And that stupid thing is everywhere. It's in every trailer. It's in every image. Oh, we got zombie tigers. And who gives a crap? Like, it's not good. The family stuff is stupid. Dave Bautista spouts out random gibberish lines in the middle. You're in the middle of an apocalyptic raid, right? And you're just having these stupid conversations about food trucks and whatever with this daughter who wants nothing to do with you. It's painful to watch. It's painful to watch him. It's painful to watch 99.9% of everyone on camera. It's painful to watch every shot. For all the reasons you talked about. This movie sucks. It's a 1 out of 10 for me, and an absolute must not watch.
I mean, I finished it because that's our thing.
Because we had to. We take the hits, man.
We could go on forever about just so much bad with this. There was, in the end, no urgency. Get,
when you got 2.5 hours, Tim, you can take your sweet time. They could have shot this movie in real time.
Yep. I mean, zero, of course they moved the bomb up because I need some sort of artificial urgency. And then even then, it didn't really matter because they didn't really come that close to getting blown up. There are no rules. There's nothing established in terms of a zombie universe or the rules for being infected. And like you said, the zombies barely, it's like later stages Walking Dead, right? This is long after the zombie apocalypse has started. So people aren't really scared of them. They're not really a factor. It doesn't really come into play. They're handled very easily. Nobody should have actually died from a zombie issue. This team should have all survived except for stupid stuff that happens to them, which isn't really a result of zombies, right? Like they end up kind of killing each other by accident more than anything else. Absolutely, completely disappointingly horrible.
I love that you point out too that there's no rules or anything set forward. Even the few that they do put out there, they break constantly, and there's no rhyme or reason. It doesn't make sense. Right now, it's interesting to say the one part is that it's kind of like what's it called? Like a double agent type thing, right? Where it's, you think it's a heist movie. It's really something different. Because the whole time I'm watching it, and to its credit, whole time I'm watching it, I was like, why are you doing this now? Right? Like, why not let them nuke all the zombies, wait a little bit, go in there in some little suits, and go get the money, right? Like, we see people escape after the nuke goes off, and everything's fine.
Indiana Jones can survive a nuke in a fridge. I'm sure that money would be okay in a vault.
That's just it. And someone else survives in the vault, right? Hashtag spoilers. So it is, so there's that. So you do at some point find out that that's not really what it's about and that there is a reason why they have to go in now. But that aside, we watch people get bit by these zombies and within minutes turn into zombies, right? We see one character supposedly get bit by a zombie, and then, right, it had to have happened before they get thrown into the vault, because after the vault, there's no more zombies.
Right.
So this guy gets bit. He sits in the vault for who knows how long before he can get out of there. And after the nuke happens, which is, 40 minutes later in the movie, he sits in the vault. He comes out of the vault. He crawls out. Miles and miles outside of Vegas. He wanders through the desert. He stumbles across a car. He steals that car. He drives into the closest town, easily, conservatively, hours down the road. He gets there. He charters a plane. He gets on the plane. He sits there. He's having a meal. He's flirting a bit. He has a drink. He goes in the bathroom, shows us he's bitten.
They're descending into Mexico at this point.
Yeah, shows us he's bitten, and then he's just kind of like, oh, man, this is going to be crazy. # sequel. And he still hasn't turned. He has been bit for hours.
Yep.
Hours, maybe a day.
And he didn't even know it.
Yo.
It's like, oh, my little scarf. Oh, look at that.
Oh, it was so bad. That's just one example of just how badly done this movie is.
Yeah.
Ugh. All right. Whatever. I have a horrible taste in my mouth now just talking about it.
Let's put a bullet in the brain of that one.
And, ooh.
Yeah. And let's get to. So that was the one I couldn't even swallow.
Yep.
Nobody was pretty tough to chew on, but I'm coming around to it.
Okay.
So we had expectations for this one. Me more a little probably than Frank. I'm still urging him to go back and revisit, especially in light of this. We've talked about it. Frank does not like Breaking Bad, and I get it. I've watched Breaking Bad again over the winter. I really don't care for it. And maybe the first season was fine, but later on, I just don't care. But Better Call Saul is a different animal, and it is a great show. And I am the least bit surprised by the skill that Bob Odenkirk has as an actor, because he is amazing in Better Call Saul.
Wait, you are surprised? You're not the least bit surprised?
I'm not the least bit surprised.
Gotcha. You fully expected him to be awesome in this based on what you've seen from Better Call Saul.
Correct. He is
I'm with you.
Massively underrated in terms of his acting ability. Because he plays a character in that show who then plays a character. Like, he's so much fun to watch. So leading into this, knowing that he was going to have a starring role in this, and then the obvious similarities to John Wick in the trailers is what this looked like, right? A guy who's retired from a life of nefarious activity, who's highly skilled. I was fully bought in. I watched the trailer once and I was like, this movie is going to be awesome. And we've been waiting on it because, like you said, I'm not in the mood of dropping this money early. I don't think any of these releases yet have garnered that Mulan or Wonder Woman or any of those things. Like they haven't had the greatest ratings to shell out that movie or that money early. So when you said Sunday night, like, I got this, it's there, I was down. Like, it was 9:30. I was like, don't care. I'm watching this.
No, bro, when I texted, I said, look, man, how would you feel about us making a switch? Because I'm about to buy this movie, and I know you've been itching to see it. And you were just, I believe your words were, the second it's there, tell me, and I will watch it tonight. I was going to do other things. Yep. I have cleared my schedule now.
Let me finish my chores, because I was working on stuff all day. And I'm sitting down to watch this movie. I don't care how tired I am.
That's adorable. I'm going to edit that out, though, because then all I'm going to hear from Melissa is, oh, so Tim does his chores first? I don't do anything. Oh, baby, I'm real busy.
I did my chores at your house on Saturday, and then I did my chores at my house.
Oh, that's even
Sunday.
Worse. Tim's done chores at 2 different houses. Oh, God. I'm totally cutting all of this. Anyways, yeah, so you were excited, you watched it.
So, unfortunately, I was left confused by it. I just couldn't shake this pit of my stomach feeling that I still haven't rectified. I was, again, like, the trailer led me to expect a sort of John Wick-esque, to the point that I was like, this movie's in the universe, right? This is somehow going to cross paths with John Wick Chapter 4 or Chapter 5 or Chapter 6, right? Like, down the line, this is setting up for a collision course. Like, it just feels like that. It looks like that. It's got the same beats to it almost, right? Like I said, a guy who's retired from this life and he gets pulled back in, and I'm like, awesome. I loved John Wick when I watched it last summer when we did it for the show. I'd never seen it before. I was like, how have I missed this movie? So I was ready for another slice of that. Like, yeah, give it to me. I love Bob Odenkirk. Like I said, I was totally down for this. But then I spent the whole time going, wow, this is way too similar to John Wick. Or this is not like John Wick at all. And I was like stuck between this is too similar, but this is not as good.
So it's interesting. That's interesting because I came at it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
You brought this movie to my attention. Mm-hmm. Once you told me about it, and by told me about it, I simply mean like you seemed really amped for it.
Yeah.
And so I knew it was a matter of time before we were going to do it on the show.
Yep.
And so I think because of that, I intentionally avoided reading too much or watching too much about it. I don't think I ever actually even saw a trailer. Mm-hmm. Now, based on the rumblings I was hearing, right, because this movie got a lot of press.
Yeah.
I mean, people were raving about it. And based on some of the stuff that just sort of fell across my gaze, because we can never avoid that stuff, is, I started to get a sense that this might be a lot like John Wick, which caused me only to retreat further because I was like, I can't go into this with preconceived biases and notions and judgments because, to be honest, if it's too similar, I'm going to hate it, right? Because that's just going to feel lazy to me. So I went into this movie knowing very little. The only things I did know was because I was watching, lately I've been getting lost in like YouTube black holes, watching lots of late night show interviews with actors, watching lots of acceptance speeches. I know it's weird. I don't know. That's just been my jam. And then, and watching a lot of Howard Stern interviews.
Interesting.
I just think, dude, he's an incredible interviewer. There's no one else who does it better.
Yeah.
And so with all that, he did a couple, and he talked in one of the Howard Stern ones. He talked about his training and how he was like, I really wanted to take this seriously. I didn't want, like, I was hesitant to take the role because I didn't want to be a joke. Like, I wanted to take this for real. He trained with the same guys, the same team, in the same facility that Keanu Reeves trains for John Wickian. And he talked about how he was in the process of doing his training. Halle Berry was there doing hers, and he's just standing there like, oh, dear God. Like, because he's watching them. And as a testament to the amount of effort he put in. Now, I love Bob Odenkirk. I only know him from a comedic side.
Yeah.
I know him from SNL, and I know him from his writing. I know him from just his bit roles and character roles in a lot of shows that I would watch. He would just kind of pop in and do stuff. I knew him a little bit from Breaking Bad, but I hated that show. And I haven't seen Better Call Saul, so I really haven't seen a lot of dramatic stuff from Bob Odenkirk. And he was talking about how seriously he was approaching this, and I was like, oh my God, this movie's not a joke, right? Yeah. So I really wanted to give him as much benefit of the doubt as I could because this was going to be an experience for me, right? Seeing this guy that I think I know is one thing, suddenly like totally flipping the script and doing something totally different.
Yeah.
So that being said, I agree with you completely that I was shocked at some of the similarities and the level of similarity between Nobody and John Wick. And I think that's its major shortcoming. You know what I think I expected, not having seen it? Like you were saying, you watched the trailers and you thought, oh, this might even be in the same universe. This is going to be similar. You just didn't know how similar. I kind of assumed this was going to be much more, and again, based on some of these interviews I saw, where he was talking about, like, he didn't want to come in here and just be like this superstar, superhero. He wanted to be a normal guy, so he wanted to get beat up. He wanted to lose. He wanted to do, right? So I saw it more as like a Harry Brown. I thought it was going to be much more of just a normal guy, beat down by life, beat down by his circumstances, beat down by his family and all these other kind of things. And something happens. A catalyst happens, right? The inciting incident, right, in screenwriting, that we're going to be introduced for 10% of the screenplay to this man with just a miserable existence.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, something happens, and he becomes somebody else and goes on this like rampage. Michael Douglas did it in Man Down. You know, like we've seen this trope from time to time, and I think it would have been awesome because he's so believable as that. We could totally buy him as like the every guy, right? Just a nobody, a genuine nobody. And then, and I was going to be so excited to watch what came of that. You know, we've all had that moment. It's so relatable. I was very surprised when it ended up that he was, you know, this trained assassin and killer and whatever else. And then suddenly he was Baba Yaga, right? And he's going after the Russian mob, and he's doing all these other things, and he's got gold stashed away, and he's doing, right? Like, it's a cat instead of a dog. It's a this instead of a that. Like, it got to be a little bit much. And I thought that was a real disservice to Bob Odenkirk and the character and the potential that it could have been. But it wasn't enough for me to not like it. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, if this movie exists in a universe where John Wick doesn't, I absolutely get it, right? Like, 100%, I'm blown away by this movie. Like, holy crap. On a second watch, I'm kind of digging it a little bit more. You know, John Wick is a guy who wanted out and never wanted back in. And in this, Bob Odenkirk's character of Hutch thought he wanted out, but he's never felt like himself again. And this was about him relapsing and getting back in. So where you had all this heart in John Wick and all of this, you know, that revenge and that the you know, the death of the dog is related to the death of his wife, and all that pulls you through that. You don't have that here, right? So there's a little less of an emotional attachment to his to Hutch's motivation. And that's what affected me the first time through. I was waiting for that. Yeah, go get him. I get it while you're getting him, right? Like, and it became more on the second watch of like, oh, I get it. He's relapsing. He's like a drug user or an alcoholic, or he got a taste and he couldn't stop himself anymore, right? He couldn't hold himself back and he had to release. I said before we started recording, he was like a tease, right? He got himself all worked up and then he couldn't, like, he sexually frustrated and then, you know, he got all teased and he got blue balls because he couldn't beat these people up. And then, you know, he unleashes this rage on the next situation that calls for it. And that's where we go.
I think that's anyone tuning into this one and watching this one, that's what I would urge you to take from this.
Yeah.
Right? Do not go into this movie expecting to watch an underdog story.
Yeah.
It absolutely is not, and you will do yourself a disservice. I think I caught on early on, right? And we were having that very conversation of, you know, John Wick is this guy who wanted out and never wanted back in, right? He was he never wanted that life. It just happened to him based on his circumstances, and all he ever wanted was a normal life.
Yep.
Bob Odenkirk in Nobody absolutely loves being a killer.
And by extension, his family does too, right? His dad and his adopted brother are very much in the same boat, right? That was his upbringing. They're all in this together. They're all retired into obscurity, and they're all now chomping at the bit.
And what makes the character so good and so subtly complex and relatable, I would argue, there are moments you must watch him. You must listen to everything he says because he gives you a lot of exposition in these quiet moments, sometimes through internal monologue, sometimes talking to one of the best running bits is he goes to give a little exposition and do sort of a little monologue to someone as they're sort of dying, and they always die in the middle of his story. And but in those moments, it's really for our benefit. And there's a point where he explains his last job,
Yeah.
As a contract killer, as a assassin, as a government, whatever, right? And he talks about how he lets this guy go for a certain reason, and years later follows up on him to make sure that he's upheld his side of the bargain, which is to stop doing what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
And what he finds is a man who genuinely left that life behind and moved on and seemed happy. He had a family, he had kids, whatever. And he sees that, and the words he uses is, "And I never get jealous, but I suddenly found myself wanting what he had." And I think he may have even said, or thinking that I wanted what he had.
Yeah.
And so this whole thing, Hutch is in love with an idea. He's in love with the idea of a normal life.
He even says it was all a facade.
See, yeah. So he wants that because he thinks that's what he's supposed to want. And once he has it, he realizes that's not what he wants. That's not him. But he's committed.
It's very much our everyday, right? When you log into Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and you see people on trips and people doing all this fun stuff, and this family's in Paris, or that family's in Disney, or that family's at the beach, and you're in your basement at work, right?
Right.
Like, oh, I want that. I want to be able to travel freely. I want to be able to whatever. But you don't see all the day to day, right?
And it's anybody who, to any extent, right, hides a part of themselves for fear of judgment, for fear of, being thought, weird, crazy, whatever. Just because you really dig it, but people in your life would hate it or judge you for whatever it is.
Or the fear of missing out. Maybe you're missing out on something else, right?
Right, or anyone who goes through the motions, right? You go to college after high school because that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. And you get a job and you get married because that's what you're supposed to do, right? This whole notion of what you're supposed to do. To any extent or level that you've experienced that feeling, right? I feel like that's what will carry you into the character of Hutch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because he comes at it from the flip side of that coin. It's the other extreme, right? He is the unthinkable. That's his normal, and he's pretending to try to live a normal life, whereas, we are living normal lives and pretend and dream about more, crazy and exotic things. Not necessarily killing people. I hope that's not what you're thinking, but still, you get the point. And so, but I think that's what makes the character so relatable and, to an extent, heartwarming. It certainly doesn't bring the amount of heart that John Wick Chapter 1 did. That was lightning in a bottle. And I think that's what I told you. I said, in a world where John Wick doesn't exist, this movie is we'd be talking about this movie forever. Yeah. Right? John Wick does it way better. At least the first one does. Yep. And it's unfortunate for nobody, the movie, that it came second, because it's just a measuring stick you'll never line up to.
Yeah, and unfortunately too, we're boxed into some corners, right? The similarities are not easy to gloss over because they are so similar, right? Beyond the kind of lead in, we're back with a Russian mob boss. We've got to get, he's got to make his way through all the henchmen and the second in command, and the head is crazy, and he stabs a guy in the eyeball with a half of a martini glass and murders him, just by stabbing him in the face 100 times. And we can't trust this guy. He's weird and unstable. But again, it's the Russian mob, and it feels so similar, and it just that we are boxed into that corner because there's really nowhere else we can go with that story, right? I don't want to say that it's a PC thing or a woke Hollywood thing, because it's not necessarily the case, and I'm not against that. But we can't have a white guy beating up a Mexican cartel or, inner city drug dealers as this story is told and needed, right? It just doesn't work.
Yeah. So when I saw that, my thoughts were exactly the same. And it was like, well, here we go again. And again, John Wick did it better. This portrayal, and I think this will lead into my positives.
Yeah.
This portrayal of the antagonist and this Russian gangster and his family is much more of a caricature. Right? And we see him in more ridiculous situations or whatever. Whereas John Wick portrays the Russians as a calmer, more reasonable, rightfully fearful, doing their best to think things through. This one is much more of just a whimsical caricature of what that is. And that, in the end, that does fit the tone of this movie. This movie is more satirical. It is more of a comedy than John Wick, for sure. And for that reason, and I'll argue in a second that we should give it a little bit more leeway. But you're absolutely right. Russians are the only choice. It's the easy choice without offending anybody, right?
Yep.
You put a bunch of black guys in there as gangsters, and he's going to fight them. Well, that's the role that we always give people of color. And that's the correct argument, right? Yeah. We need to expand the horizons, right? If it was a bunch of, triad members, if it's a Mexican cartel, if it's whatever, that's what we're used to, and that is not necessarily the case. That's why part of what makes this movie so great is RZA plays an assassin on his level, his brother, right? Yep. A person of color who is a good guy and not the head of this, gangster organization.
But even take that a step further, too, and add to the satirical element, there's a running joke that the second in command of the Russian gangsters is an Ethiopian, a Russian man of Ethiopian descent, right?
Right,
and
right.
Like,
I forgot about that.
He's just as Russian as the rest of us. And it becomes a thing every time. They're like, oh, never seen a black Russian before. And he's like, I get that a lot. Like,
in a pretty killer Russian accent. Yeah. And so that is what it is. And I think that's the easy way to not really offend anybody. And, with things being what they are, who cares if you offend a Russian, right? You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm just playing. So that being the case, I think that's where that makes sense. But let's lead into some of the positives, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Taking a step back, a 30,000-foot view with a little bit of perspective, yes, this movie is hugely similar to John Wick, but does that mean that it can't exist alongside? And I would argue that no, right? Mm-hmm. This movie is inherently a bit more comedic because of the casting of Bob Odenkirk, and he does an amazing job. There's so many scenes in this movie where I find myself chuckling, if not laughing, just because of how it's cut together, how it's done. It's shot masterfully. The opening sequence...
Yeah.
We
paid
talked
a lot more attention to that on the second
Did you?
Through.
Did you see what I was talking about?
Yeah, for sure.
So the opening sequence, we talked a little bit about the opening of Army of the Dead. The opening sequence for Nobody, when I'm watching it, I was so pissed off in like instant seconds, right? It is so repetitive, right? We see him in his daily routine. And you just get little 1-second blips. You get a sound, you get a whatever, right? So it's him missing the trash, him going for a run, him doing pull-ups, a horn honking as he walks into work, someone at work saying something to him coming home, this, that, his wife sleeping with the pillow in between them, on and on and on. And this repeats for minutes, which doesn't sound like a long time, but in terms of, right, like in terms of movie time, every minute is an eternity. And this goes on for minutes.
Every time she says now, like on the second watch, you missed the trash.
You missed the trash. You missed the trash. You missed the trash. And so, and part of it, but here's the brilliance of it, right? Here's what's amazing about it. Number one, we all get it.
Yep.
We all get nagged by our wives, our husbands, our spouses, whoever. We all feel the grind of work. We all feel these things. And so not only is it aggravating and irritating us because of its repetition, it's also aggravating and irritating us because we get it.
Yep.
And what I notice is that when the movie finally starts, right, and we are suddenly thrown into this man's reality of being surrounded, of just living a life that is difficult, to say the least, right?
Mm-hmm.
I found myself instinctively in the correct mood to receive the tone of this movie. The movie set me up for success. It rattled my nerves. It aggravated me. It irritated me. I felt tense. I felt frustrated. I felt a little bit angry. Yeah. And suddenly I felt like I could go knock the hell out of a couple of brick walls. Right? And so I got him. I understood Hutch's character in minutes. And as the movie started and my rage subsided, I was like, wow. That is a masterful filmmaking. That is bringing your audience not only into the movie, but into the mindset that you want them to be in a creative and artistic way. And it was absolutely stunning. Once I kind of, and that was my experience. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's not the case. Maybe it sounds pretentious. Maybe whatever. It's just, that's what it did to me. I can't speak that was its intention. I can't imagine it wasn't. But that's what I got from it. And from that moment on, I was in, because for the next 90 minutes, and that's what this is, right? Yeah. Army of the Dead is total garbage for 2.5 hours. This movie is 90 minutes of solid filmmaking and decent screenwriting, right? The thievery from John Wick aside. And so for the next 90 minutes, I was fully invested because I didn't want to miss another trick. I didn't want to miss another moment. And it didn't disappoint me. Enough cannot be said about Bob Odenkirk in this movie. Mm-hmm. He was brilliant.
And I'm
absolutely brilliant.
And I'm really hoping that means that you're going to give him a try in Better Call Saul.
I will.
It's worth it.
As promised. And here's the thing. Not only is he a phenomenal actor, not only does he beautifully embody this character, I totally bought him. The moments, these really subtle moments, right, where you feel his tension building. He can't do this for one more day. And there's the scene where the guys are coming on the bus, and his reaction is not like, oh no, here I go. Or like if it was John Wick, he'd be sitting there and he'd be like, oh, I'm going to have to fight these guys. You know? Right. Hutch is sitting there like, please God, bring me these guys because I need to fight them. And so, he sold me on that. And for him to do that, for me coming to this with him as a comedic guy, was nothing short of awesome. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say, the work he put in to delivering high quality action sequences, honestly, maybe not to the level of John Wick, because that gung fu stuff is just next level. Yeah. But Bob Odenkirk showed up for work. That dude put in the work. And the fight scenes, the sequences, all of it were flawless, seamless, believable, and at no point was I distracted like, this is Bob Odenkirk. No, I was invested. I was like, this dude is breaking skulls. That bus sequence, oh my God.
Yeah, the what was really impressive to me about that on the second watch through was that he didn't kill any of those guys. I mean, they might eventually die.
Well, we find out, right? The guy does eventually die because he's like, you killed my brother or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the last that we see of him is they're like, yeah, he's toast.
And that's what he was like. He was alive when I left him. But he collapses his throat.
Right, but what I'm saying is like it's not a John Wick thing where every shot was maximum damage, right? Like, sure. It wasn't a headshot. It wasn't. There was hardly actually any gunplay in the early fights from Bob Odenkirk, right?
Agreed.
Like he kills a guy with a tea kettle, he strangles a guy with a bus cord.
Lots
and
of
smacks
knives.
Himself against the side of the bus, and the stop requested thing is just going ding ding ding,
which
ding,
is exactly it's so good.
Yeah.
Stop requesting. Stop requesting.
So it's and then in the end, it's like a grown up Home Alone, right? Like,
yes,
I've got a plan.
It's
and
so good.
He arms the warehouse of his job with, booby traps, a rocket, a device that shoots rebar through guys, a drill press that explodes a grenade, right?
A paint can at the top of the stairs that knocks out one of their teeth.
No, that was Home Alone.
Oh, that yeah.
But I will say, we've talked about the
is Home Alone the one where Kevin McAllister caves in a man's throat?
Yes. But we talked about the sort of satiricalness, and Bob Odenkirk taking this seriously. There's still a fair amount of comedy in this,
yes.
right?
Yes,
and it works really well. I will say, my favorite part of this movie is, I guess, a cameo, a little bit more than a cameo.
If you're going to say what I think you're going to say, it's more than a cameo. Yeah.
Christopher Lloyd plays Hutch's dad,
yes.
plays Bob Odenkirk's character's dad. And it was so awesome to see him. And he starts out, he's in a nursing home. He's so frail. And you're like, aw, he looks so rough and he's so old. And he ends this movie armed to the teeth with shotguns and just goes to town with childlike abandon and glee.
What's the line? Dad, you brought a lot of shotguns. You brought a lot of Russians.
Yeah. And he just downs these guys, and he is having so much fun. He's like, I tried the retired life. Wake up, sleep late, wake up, wander around the quad, have lunch, nap, swim, but damn did I miss this. And he's just blowing guys away, and he's just having so much fun. And it was great to see him. My favorite scene is the Russians come for him in the nursing home, and he's always sitting in his recliner watching Westerns, and it looks like he's asleep, and the Russians are about to put one in his head. And he grabs the gun and disarms it, blows the other guy away with a shotgun, blows the other guy away with a shotgun. And the orderly who is sleeping at the front desk comes running down the hallway, throws open the door, and Pops has got the guy smothering him to holding his mouth shut while he's bleeding out. And the orderly's like, damn it, turn those Westerns down. And he's because he thought the gunshots were just from the movie. It was so funny. And he's raises the clicker to turn the volume down.
Sorry.
It's so fun. I really enjoyed every scene that he was in. It was just absolutely delightful. And I even on second watch, he was still my favorite part. I couldn't wait to get to those parts. So to kind of bring it all home, it's definitely worth a watch. I think absolutely does it suffer from this shadow. There's tons of articles about whether these are connected or whether these should be connected or not. I definitely urge you to not connect them. It doesn't do it any favors. And if you can look past it, there's a ton of meat in this that is different. There's a lot of different flavors to this, and they can absolutely exist. I definitely see myself going back to this again. I understand there'll be more. There looks like there's going to be a series of these, at least a sequel. And at 90 minutes, it's easy to watch. It's so easy to watch compared to that other garbage that we forced ourselves to watch.
Yep, I agree with everything you just said. I think, if you can separate your brain and watch this in a vacuum, I think you will be much better off for it. I think you'll enjoy it even more. Yep. I think this does suffer a bit. You can't escape it. It suffers from the existence of John Wick. But don't let that detract you from really taking in the styling, the styling is very similar, but just the way that they approach setting up this world, setting up this theme, these emotions, and all the subtleties that play out as you watch this movie, they're really, really enjoyable. Bob Odenkirk is, like I said, he showed up and is an absolute revelation in this movie, and is worth the price of admission just to really see him bring this character to life and to do it so well. and so masterfully. It was really fun to watch. I love that you closed on Christopher Lloyd. Just remembering he's still around puts a smile on your face.
Yeah.
And he delivers in this movie. It is, a lot of the other characters are arguably forgettable. Yeah. Connie Nielsen doesn't really do a whole lot. Even RZA, it's fine, but he's not the center of attention anyway. So I think everyone shows up and delivered exactly what they were supposed to. No more, no less. Obvious similarities aside, this movie is well worth the time. It's available to rent and purchase. It's certainly worth the cost of a rental.
Sure.
If you don't think you'll ever see it again, pay the $6 and check this one out. You won't be upset that you did it, especially if you love that vein of film, right?
Yeah.
I would argue I'm not mad I bought it. $20 felt like a worthy investment. Sure. So yeah, it's great. Am I looking forward to a sequel? I'll be very honest with you and say that I'm not. We've seen that fail with John Wick, at least in my opinion. The world just gets too big. And this movie in particular certainly has that looming over it. I think this movie is going to get too big. And the storylines are going to extend. John Wick Chapter 1 was about 90 minutes. And then suddenly we're up to 2.5 hours in Chapter 3. So
yeah, they've unfortunately left a few big loose ends that...
We have a whole organized Russian mafia that now we're going to have to contend with.
We don't know what happens with his family. His wife's like, go deal with this and then we'll work on us. We don't see them again after halfway through the movie, right? His wife and kids, they're gone.
No. We see them at the end. Yeah. When they're buying the house.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And the wife's like, and he gets the phone call and we don't hear what the phone call is.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we know it's something. She's like, does this place have a basement?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. So, no, she's back, but that's exactly my point. And suddenly, that part's a little bit annoying. So what? Is everything good now because now your man kills Russians? It's like, but the real point is now he's living his true self. So now he can fully be, himself and therefore present in his life as opposed to feeling like he's constantly focused on suppressing himself and therefore, not being fully present in his marriage and in his life. And so, and again, that you can have these types of conversations with a movie like this is a true testament to how well this movie's made. I wish they would just let this one stand alone and not fall into the trap that John Wick has fallen into. To be fair, John Wick has made buckets of money with each one that they've put out there. But that's a hard precedent to ignore. But I do fear that this movie's going to get a little bigger than it can handle as the series goes on. And so watch this one and enjoy this one because I'm not sure it'll get better than this. But this one's certainly worth the time. I give this one a 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah. I mean, on pure value, separated in a vacuum, I totally agree with that.
Oh, if I separated it in a vacuum, I would give it higher. 6.5 accounts for a penalty for it just being way too similar.
Okay.
If I had seen this movie first, this movie would arguably be an 8.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get it. I agree. Yep.
All right, guys. Well, that about wraps us up for this week. Hope you enjoyed our conversation about Army of the Dead and Nobody. I'm totally blanking on the movies we just talked about for an hour.
Yep.
Next week, we don't have a movie lined up just yet. So stay tuned because we're still trying to navigate the next week or two as we sort out holiday weekend and my travels and things like that are going to complicate our recording schedule a little bit. So just stay tuned on Instagram and we will post up what we're going to be talking about next in the next day or two. And you'll have plenty of time to give that a watch. It'll all just depend on what we record and when is basically where we're at. So that being said, Follow us on Instagram at Paused Reviews. Check out the website, www.pausedreviews.com, hosted by Podbean. You can see all of our episodes there, as well as anywhere that you get podcasts. You can shoot us an email, pausereviews@gmail.com, DM us on Instagram, hit us up on Facebook, all that kind of stuff. We're everywhere. We're everywhere that you need us to be. So reach out. Let us know your thoughts about what we talked about. Let us know if there's anything you want us to be checking out, anything you want us to watch, anything you want to hear about. We're always open to suggestions, recommendations, requests, questions, all of it. So make sure you hit us up and engage, because that's what we're here for. We love having these conversations, not only with each other, but with you too.
Yeah, let us know some of the hits you've taken. Let us take those hits with you. Let us watch something for you. Let us, give us a couple things that you can't decide between, and we'll make we'll be your sommelier of Netflix.
No, man, absolutely. Actually, it was an awesome moment. A buddy of mine, friend of the show. We've talked about him from time to time, James. He hits me up the other day, and he's like, me and the lady are hoping to watch a movie tonight, thinking about some kind of like a rom-com type thing. Any suggestions? And it was just awesome. It was like, hell yeah, I got suggestions. So, I was like, oh, what do you got? What streamers, whatever. So hit us up, man. If you're looking for something to watch, or you have a question, or you want us to curate something for you, happy to do it. And we'd love to talk about it on the show as well. So, as always, friends, please have a safe and happy week. And we will catch you back here next Thursday for another episode of the amazing, incredible, incomparable Pause Reviews Podcast.
Happy 4th.
Yeah, I'm your boy, Frank.
This is Tim.
And we'll see you guys next week. Peace.